Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in this Thursday morning in your nation's capital and all around the mid-Atlantic, and let's face it, all around the nation. We are America's morning show, and we appreciate you letting us be a part of your morning routine. Coming up in 30 minutes, Sean Parnell. He was at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and we're going to get his reaction and many of the questions he's got as a trained military eye about what the Secret Service did and did not do and why. At 8:05, KT McFarland on the world's reaction to the events of the last week. And then at 8:35, boy, he was stunning last night at the stage in Milwaukee. Ambassador Rick Grenell. That's a loaded lineup, and I'm glad I've got Patrice Onwuka to help us through it all. Good morning, Patrice.
Hey, good morning, Larry. Good morning, everybody.
And joining us right now is Caroline Sunshine. She's Deputy Director of Communications for the Trump campaign, and she's got the greatest name in the entire universe, Caroline Sunshine. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I know you've been very busy. I've been seeing you all over the media speaking on behalf of President Trump. How I have to ask you up front, because you have interactions with President Trump. You, of course, have sort of been in the center of all the conversations that have gone on since the tragic events of July 13th. Everyone is saying the same thing since the moment we saw President Trump enter the arena Monday night. He looks different. There is something about it, whether it is fatigue, whether it's a pain in his recovery, not just from the bullet to the ear, but also I got to think he's probably sore from being tackled by multiple Secret Service agents. But there is almost a defiant, resolute calm about President Trump that we haven't seen before. Can you speak to that? Have you noticed something different in Donald Trump?
Yes. Well, President Trump is and remains in high spirits. But as you mentioned, I think what you're seeing on the president is a stoicism and a resolve. This is a man who now belongs to the unique category of people who've had a brush with death and lived. And I think President Trump has spent, his entire time in the political arena. He's always said, they're not after me, they're after you, I'm just in the way. And on that day in Pennsylvania, President Trump found himself in the way of an assassin's bullet. And when he got up to his feet with blood still on his face, very much still in danger, and said, fight, 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 he reminded us that good does defeat evil, but only when we have the courage to stand up and fight against it. President Trump has spent his time, as I mentioned, in the political arena fighting for the forgotten men and women. I think what you're seeing also with him is a man who is carrying the memory of those who are gone but not forgotten with him. They are no longer with us, but he is still here with us, carrying on their memory. Of course, I'm thinking of the memory of Corey Comborator, Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungaray, Rachel Morin, the 13 U.S. service members that Joe Biden can't remember died under his watch. He is going forth as a man who has just had a brush with death, carrying their spirit, their memory with him on his shoulders, and the weight of that, and the weight of a nation, really. Yeah. I also think President Trump is here to still remind us of the words of another great American president who didn't survive the assassin's bullet, that we here so highly resolve, that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom, that government of for and by the people shall not perish from the earth. This country is starving for unity. They're not finding it in the Democrat Party, which can barely unify itself. They're looking to President Trump. The eyes of the nation and the weight of a nation are on his shoulders, and he's carrying it forward on to victory for us.
So, Caroline, you're talking about unity, and I think that was one of the big themes from last night, both in a lot of the different speeches that were made, but particularly Vice President candidate J.D. Vance. Can you talk about, some of the other key themes that came out, as well as, what you see the Vice President really bringing to the ticket and what he's going to be, helping President Trump with?
Absolutely. Well, I call President Trump the great American fighter. I think Ronald Reagan, another great president who dodged the assassin's bullet, Ronald Reagan was the great communicator. Donald Trump is the great American fighter. And as you saw last night on that stage, he has selected a fellow fighter in J.D. Vance. Really tremendous for the American people to get to know J.D. Vance a little bit last night. As you can see, he is a man of deep resolve as well. Also of deep humor. He's so proud to be from Ohio, so proud to have gone to the Ohio State, I might add. But J.D. Vance spoke with candor last night about his own life experiences that I think actually many Americans can relate to. I think one of the most poignant moments from last night was J.D. Vance doing what I guess you would hope all vice presidential nominees would do, which is give a shout-out to their mother. He shouted out his mother, but he also mentioned that his mother, Beverly, is 10 years sober. He's been very honest about his family's background, where he grew up. He comes from a community of forgotten men and women. I think millions of Americans watching last night could relate to J.D. Vance. He brings yet another aspect of relatability to our ticket. And then also he is an incredibly articulate messenger for President Trump's vision, and he's very much aligned with President Trump's policy vision. You know, the MAGA movement, which has now unified the Republican Party around that ethos, really stands for fair trade, not free trade, securing our borders, ending our endless foreign wars. J.D. Vance, of course, brings that unique perspective, having been a soldier. He brings the soldier's perspective to that, having served in the global wars on terror. And I thought he brought all those experiences to bear last night on that stage and did it in a way that I think charmed the American people, made them laugh a bit, and really helped them get to know his heart.
Caroline Sunshine is our guest, who no doubt remembers that the host of this show bleeds maize and blue and is a Michigan Wolverine fan. But that's fine. I'm going to overlook it for the sake of unity right now in the party. Let's talk about President Trump tonight. Famously, he told Selena Zito, who was our guest on the program Monday morning, who was also there in Butler, Pennsylvania, when the assassin's bullet whizzed by the president's head, that he tore up his speech that he was planning on giving and has written a new speech. Can you give us some insight into the difference between what a speech he was going to deliver versus what we will hear tonight?
Absolutely. Well, certainly an assassin's bullet is the difference. Look, when President Trump, as I said, got up to his feet with blood still on his face, in the middle of danger, gets up and still says, fight, fight, fight. Those images now belong to the ages, and those images have been a source of inspiration and hope. But when President Trump said fight, 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 he didn't mean it for one specific type of voter, one specific type of American. He meant it for all Americans. He said it for our country. This country is starving for unity. As I said, they're looking to President Trump to deliver it. There's been a stark contrast, unfortunately, I think, with the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is having a hard enough time unifying themselves, let alone being in a position to unify this country. But we've also seen some of the rhetoric, unfortunately, still coming out of the Democrat Party, their surrogates, even the Biden campaign themselves, going right back to divisive political attacks, going right back to business as usual. That couldn't be a further contrast from what you've seen from President Trump. As I said, this is a man who has had a brush with death, who's faced what we all fear the most, death, really, right? Lived to tell the tale and has delivered nothing but positivity and unity in his messaging, and will continue to do so on that stage and really meet the moment for our country.
All right, Caroline Sunshine, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are there in Milwaukee, as so far so good, 3 for 3. Each night has been an absolute banger, and we're very much looking forward tonight at the Republican National Convention and then onward to November. Thanks, Caroline.
I love that. Thank you so much.
That was kind of gratuitous, wasn't it? The whole, the Ohio State University thing. Do you think she was trying to get under my skin? I'm not going to let her do it. I didn't.
No.
In fact, it didn't.
She is too bright and sunny for that, Larry. She's too pure-hearted.
You don't know Ohio State fans. You don't know how they are, Patrice. It's.
On the next Vince Coglianese show, will the Secret Service tell Congress the truth? We'll ask Congressman Mark Green, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, when he joins us 3 to 6 here on WMAL.
In the nearly 3 years since Hunter's been gone, there has been silence. Silence from that empty space at the dinner table where Hunter would have joined his brothers and sister and us for family gatherings. And there has been a deafening silence from the Biden and Harris administration.
J.D. Vance was great last night. All the speakers were great last night. All the elected officials and professional politicians were great last night. The theme, though, was Make America Strong once again. It was about national security, and nothing holds a candle to the presentation of the 13 Gold Star parents who spoke on behalf of their fallen children who should not have died. Yes, they raised their hand willingly to wear the uniform and put their lives on the line for our country. But when they are sent into harm's way out of negligence, like these 13 were, with the failed withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan under President Biden's watch, and then he goes on to claim it was a success, to check his watch in Dover when the remains of those fallen were transferred to their homeland, and then to lie at the debate 2 weeks ago and say that no one died on his watch. It is beyond despicable. And they stopped, this mother and father of Hunter Lopez. They gave due what the president and his administration refuses to acknowledge.
All 13 service members who lost their lives at Abbey Gate. David Espinoza. Nicole G. Taylor Hoover. Ryan C. Knaus. Riley McCollum. Dylan Marola.
I want you to keep listening, but I want you to notice that the crowd begins repeating the names in unison together. As a person who has been involved in live events in the past, this is spontaneous. This is not something you plan, and it is something that is so moving and so emotional and so spontaneous. It is truly the American spirit, and it resonates, this message that not only will these parents say their names, we Americans will all say their names. We will continue to do what Joe Biden and his administration still refuses to do. He has not even said their names. Listen to some more.
Kareem Nakui. Dagan Page. Johanny Pichardo. Humberto Sanchez. Jared Schmitz. Maxton Sobiak. And my son, Hunter Lopez.
It was so powerful and such a glaring example of the failures of this president and the people around him that it defies any further commentary, at least from me. It was so good, so important, and it really brings home, Patrice, exactly what's at stake in this election.
Yeah, it was so powerful listening to those names being read, and one of the parents saying, I couldn't believe when Joe Biden was looking at his watch at a moment when I had lost my child. That's gut-wrenching, and it says most about who President Biden really is in the moments that count.
Patrice, I'm glad that our listeners this morning were able to hear that moment, and across the networks, C-SPAN, cable news, CNN, Fox News, Newsmax, they all got to see that powerful moment. But if you were watching MSNBC, this is what you heard instead. Oh, excuse me. This is what you heard instead.
He is now going to join us. He is our friend Jamie Harrison, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. You have stumbled into quite a conversation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for being here.
Rachel, I followed it intensely.
Listen to that. Yeah, they cut away at the beginning of this presentation of the Gold Star family members and the parents of those 13 heroes. And they cut to an interview with the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. You can hear they're yucking it up. They're giggling. They're having a good time. It was a very, very different. I don't know what it was exactly. They called it coverage of the Republican National Convention, but I don't think you can really call it coverage of the convention if that's what you do.
It was just a new backdrop for them. That's all the convention was. It was just a different backdrop while they made the same tired lines and joked about the same things. And I think the American people see that.
By the way, you mentioned backdrop. That's literally what it was. They're not in Milwaukee, but they have a giant set behind them. It's an LED screen that shows the stage and the live movement to make it look like they're in Milwaukee. But they did not make the trip. So they are. It is, may I say, literally fake news.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Don't want to waste much time here. I want to get right to our interview, but just know that in the 8 o'clock hour, we'll speak with K.T. McFarland, and then at 8:30, we'll speak with Ambassador Rick Grenell. It's Larry O'Connor and Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Hey, good morning, Larry.
Joining us now is Sean Parnell. Now, Sean Parnell is a combat veteran, retired Army infantry captain. He was with the 10th Mountain Division. He wrote the book, Battleground with Sean Parnell. He's the host of Battleground with Sean Parnell. He also was in Butler, Pennsylvania at the rally at the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life, and he has been sharing his insights and photographs. And Sean, first of all, thanks for joining us, because those photographs that you've been sharing on social media, it really does put in perspective exactly how crazy it is that that building was not 1,000% locked down. The diagrams, the overhead shots, the maps that we see on cable, it doesn't tell the story. Unless you're in exactly where you were with that perspective, you know how insanely negligent this was.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me, Larry. But, I was looking at the satellite imagery and trying to process what happened after the fact, because as looking back at this, it's hard to believe it was 20 feet away and witnessed all of this happen to President Trump. But having been in many firefights in my life, way too many to count, I thought in the moment, okay, this is clearly, instantly, this is sniper fire. Everybody needs to get down. And then the next step is, like a combat leader, is like, where is the fire coming from? Because you have to determine where the fire is coming from to figure out if you can move people at all, and if you can, how to get people out of there as safely as possible, utilizing cover and concealment. That's where my mind was. I had my wife there. I had 95-year-old Mrs. Fogel there. I had a pregnant woman right down next to me. And in the moment, I knew, okay, building or water tower. And then I checked myself, Larry, because I thought, like, okay, there's no way that's an option, because the Secret Service almost assuredly has that on lockdown.
Right. It's like, well, we could eliminate that because there's no way. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I know. It's crazy.
Well,
so, Sean, I'm sorry, but just real fast. Earlier,
Yeah.
I was laying this out. There's going to be an investigation, and when you investigate something, you don't immediately rule out any possibility. You leave every possibility open until the evidence removes that possibility. And it seems to me, based on the evidence that we have seen right now, there are two explanations to how this happened. It was either gross negligence, or I hate to say it, but you can't rule it out unless you've got evidence that shows it wasn't the case. It could have been nefarious. Am I wrong
absolutely.
that those are the two paths you have to walk down?
No, so just, critical thinking in today's day and age is labeled conspiracy theories, which is absurd, because I've been taught my whole life to think for myself and look at the facts and assess the situation. If you don't have everything on the table, okay, look, here's the incident, here's what happened, let's try to figure out what went wrong. And in the military, you do this in the form of after-action reports. You get everybody together, and then everything is on the table. And so if you don't put something on the table, how do you effectively rule it out?
Yeah.
And so you can't even ask the question on the media without people saying, oh, my gosh, well, you can't, intentional and nefarious, so you can't ask that question. It's like, why can't we ask that? We have to ask that question. We have a responsibility to the people in that crowd, to President Trump, of course, but to the man who lost his life, to figure out the truth. And if you can't even ask the question, how do you find an answer?
Well, Sean, talking about getting to answers, I'm also thinking about accountability and who's responsible here and who should be taking responsibility. My question, in the moment, we understand now, based on the timeline, that so many, both Secret Service as well as local law enforcement, saw this guy. And I'm guessing they told their higher-ups or their other colleagues about this. Can you shed any light on what the kind of the command and control looks like? I mean, how high up does this intel need to go for someone to say pull the trigger on this assailant before he takes the shots, which he did?
Well, I mean, news continues to come out on this every single day, and I've been wondering myself the same question. Well, apparently local police saw this guy up to 26 minutes, but now I've seen reports that maybe they were tracking this guy for 3 hours before the event.
Whoa.
And let me just tell you, I have been in many situations like this in Afghanistan, real terrible situations, but I've never seen tactical negligence displayed on this scale ever in my life, ever. And because it's just so simple. Like the reason why I posted those pictures is because you're right, the satellite imagery doesn't do it justice. You can't tell how close they are. They're right on top of us. All you have to do is have a couple people on that building. And if you're a local police officer, which I'm not, by the way, the U.S. Secret Service blaming the local police on this is just absurd. When have you ever heard of the feds coming into a situation and relinquishing tactical control of a situation to locals? It's absolutely ridiculous. It never happens, especially when it pertains to protection of a president. So you knew that the guy was there. Here's what I can't understand. How do you let a president walk out on stage knowing that the threat is out there, whereabouts unknown? I cannot fathom that. Fathom that.
I can't either. In fact, there's reports now, and again, from credible news sources, I want to reiterate, that he was spotted on the roof a full 20 minutes before the president took the stage. The questions are boundless. Sean Parnell, I guess the next question is, who do we trust to answer those questions? Because the American people, sadly, over the years, we have grown pretty cynical about whether we will be told the truth. And by the way, everyone who's saying, how dare you ask this question or that question, by suppressing people from asking questions about something we all saw, and as Mr. Parnell says here, is so blatantly obvious, should have been done and wasn't, and you ask why it wasn't done, to tell us we can't ask those questions actually feeds into the cynicism and the distrust. Yeah. Allow us to discuss these things. When you tell us we can't talk about it, then we feel like you're hiding something. Mr. Parnell, finish us up here.
Absolutely. And look, if you expect any sort of accountability or transparency with regards to the investigation, I'm not optimistic, because you have the director of the Secret Service saying that you couldn't put snipers up there because of a sloped roof. My point there is, it's ridiculous. So my point is that they're already lying about it. And if they're already lying about it now in the beginning, they're most certainly going to lie about it as we go throughout this investigation. When intelligent people, seemingly intelligent people, say stupid things that don't make sense, oftentimes the intersection is some form of corruption, and I hate that.
Captain Parnell, what do you say in the 10th Mountain Division when you're in combat and an NCO or an enlisted comes back and says, sorry, Captain, I can't get up there. It's too sloped for me.
I see what you did there. I would be like, are you kidding me? Like, we put, I personally in place designated marksmen and sniper teams on down slopes of the Himalaya mountains and the Hindu Kush mountains. So like, I'm serious. It's like when I heard that, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And honestly, it explains so much about why things went so wrong.
Oh, Sean, come on. The Himalaya is very different than a corrugated roof in a business park in Western PA. You know what? You have high standards. We got to leave it there. It's always great talking with you, though, and please be a regular guest, because your region of Pennsylvania is so critical to this election. By the way, to that end, really quickly, I'm already over, but J.D. Vance, I mean, he speaks to your voters, does he not?
Yeah, I love him. I mean, he's a good friend of mine. He was the right pick for sure.
All right, we'll leave it there.
Thanks so much,
Sean Parnell. Great stuff. Battleground with Sean Parnell. Check out that podcast on Rumble. Thank you, Sean. It's 7:45, WMAL, traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the fives. Here comes Jamie Whitten. Rick Grenell was going to join us at 8:35, but boy, I want to play a little bit of his speech from last night, Patrice, because it's such a stark contrast about, the kind of steady hands and wise experience that the new team will bring to the table on foreign policy and national security issues.
But after 4 years of Joe Biden Wars are back, the Taliban is back, and members of ISIS have slipped through America's broken southern border. Russia is sailing warships off the coast of Florida. China is bullying its neighbors. Iran is waging a war in Israel and Gaza with help from Joe Biden.
Yeah, laying out exactly how things have fallen apart so quickly was so powerful.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, if this matters to people, it does matter to some people. Rick Grenell is openly gay. Donald Trump made him the first openly gay prominent ambassador, making him ambassador to Germany, but also elevated him to the position of director of national intelligence, the cabinet. Everyone says, oh, Pete Buttigieg, first gay cabinet level. No, Rick Grenell was. They just try
That's
to
right.
ignore Rick
Yeah.
Grenell because they don't like his politics. And he raised this issue from the stage last night.
There was only one man with the strength to call out the lies and failures of both Democrats and Republicans: Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't care if you're gay or straight, black, brown, or white, or what gender you are. He knows that we are all Americans and that it's time to put America first. After 16 years of wars and chaos, the world looked different when President Trump was in the White House. Russia invaded Ukraine under both Obama and Biden, but Putin did not dare escalate under President Trump.
That's right. There's more from Rick Grenell, and he's going to join us at 8:35. But I'm just so honored that to know this man, and proud to know that Donald Trump selects people like this for his inner circle.
And what's great about Rick is he's so down to earth. We've had him on. I love CPAC when we get to have him on in person live. And, you know, he's so unassuming, but he has so much depth, so much wisdom, so much insight. And I would love to see him back helping shape our foreign policy away from what it's become.
Amen. In our next hour, we'll address it with him. We'll also address foreign policy and what the world is thinking right now